The thing I want to ask you as I begin this discussion that we'll have today is this question. And I'd like you to take just a minute and jot down some of those thoughts of who comes into your mind when you think about this question. Who are the most important connections to your success at work, you individually? When you think about that list and those connections, it's interesting to think about how dependent we are, how enmeshed we are to do our work and to deliver on the results we're expected to deliver. And I see a change afoot. I see the power of connection increasing it's trending up. It used to be that the way we approached our work was much more independently, and I think the shift is on. And we're seeing it in our workforces, we're seeing it in our teams. I was out interviewing a bunch of people about who was most influential in their work. And I saw similar things like this. Team, manager. I think if you were to roll back the clock many years, it would have probably been primarily the manager. We're seeing a broadening, an interconnectedness, a dependence on a lot of connections to do what we do and the day in and day out work that we have. As we think about strategies for how we innovate, things are changing. I think most of us probably grew up with the notion that innovation was done by smart people one-on-one, that you went into your closet, your cave, your lab, and you came back out with some brilliant innovation. I think that's part of what we all sort of were raised with, that it takes somebody super creative, super smart, on their own, figuring it out, kind of this lone inventor, lone innovator. And that's changing. And I want to show you a few ideas, some research that we've done that hopefully will help you shift your thinking around the power of connection and around how things are shifting in our work environments. And the nature of our work is permanently changing. And I think it's a sea change that's coming gradually at first, and then we're going to see that accelerate significantly. First of all, just a little story, an example. This comes from a number of heart surgeons in a children's hospital outside of London. They were studying a very difficult problem. They had a heart surgery practice there for young kids who needed significant surgery. And often that surgery would last 6 or 8 hours. At the end of that surgery, they would need to transfer that child, that patient, out of the OR, the operating room, into the intensive care unit where that patient, that child, would be for the next several days and sometimes weeks during that critical recuperation process. And the challenge that they discovered in their records was that they had lost a number of kids, and it was unexpected. And they traced all of the research back to it was happening during this critical handoff. And if you think about that handoff, it's a challenge. They've got to take all of the equipment out, all of the heart monitoring equipment, the life support systems, plug them all into portable equipment, take them down the hall or maybe to another floor, and then replug it all in. And you've got all of the information, you've got all of the technology, you've got a whole group of doctors and nurses that are traveling with this patient. So it's a very complex problem to solve. And they were struggling with it. And there were so many variables and all kinds of issues, and they couldn't figure out a way to get it solved. And it just vexed them. Many of us run into problems like that, where you just feel like it's so complicated. How do we get our arms around this thing? Well, after one surgery, the doctors were sitting in their doctor's lounge, and the TV was on in the background, and a couple of the doctors were watching a Formula One car race. Just was going on in the background. And as they were watching this, one of the doctors paid particular attention to the pit crew. This pit crew, and you guys have seen this, right? You see like 20 guys scramble over the wall as the car pulls in. They're putting the jacks underneath the car, jack it up, pull the wheels off, new wheels on, clean off the air intakes, gas it up, drop it back down, and out the door. All in 6.8 seconds. And this doctor, as he's watching this, was scratching his head going, are you kidding me? How do they pull that off? 20 individuals not even talking to each other. They are just all over it, and every second counts for that driver who's then got to get back on the track. And as that doctor sat there and thought about that, he thought to himself, wow, that pit crew's figured out an interesting process. I wonder what a conversation might be with that pit crew as we think about trying to improve this process of this critical handoff. And then he did something that most people don't do. He picked up the phone and he called the Italian Ferrari pit crew team. He called them. Who does that, right? Who does that? What does a pit crew know about post-heart surgery issues? So he calls them up and he's like, hey, I was watching this. How do you guys do that? What is it that you do to drive that? And he said, well, we kind of lay this process out, and you know what? You ought to come over and take a look. And we lay it all out, and we practice it, and we have some things that really drive our success. So, you know, that sounds fun, right? Hop over on a plane from England and go over to Italy. And they spent some time talking with the pit crew. They were showing them what they were doing. And the guys in the pit crew said, you know what? When you go back, why don't you send us a tape? Do a little video of what this handoff process looks like. And we'll watch it, and you know, we're just a bunch of pit crew guys, but we'll watch it, and maybe we'll have some thoughts about how to improve the process, and maybe we'll come up with something. So they went back and they filmed it, and they sent the film over to the pit crew, and they watched it. They called the doctor back and said, oh my gosh, more people don't die in this process? It's chaotic. How do you get anything to work right? This is insane. I don't see anybody in charge. Your processes, people seem like there's no checklist, there's no organization to the flow of this thing. And he was like, well, wait a second, you know, there's some of that. And so he said, why don't we sit down with you, and I think we can help you. In the Ferrari world, there's a lollipop man, as they call him. It's the guy who kind of flags them in, and then he's the one who's in charge, and everybody else. So they start breaking through the process, and they figure out a cleaner way to do it. They cut 50% of the errors out from those conversations. 50% of the technical and communication errors that were leading to the disasters that they had had. Isn't that interesting? A conversation with somebody who has none of the same expertise as them were the ones who could see things and bring insights to them that made all the difference in the results. That question, why does that work, has been on my mind for a long time. How is it that a conversation can spark new insight, new innovation? We wanted to know, are there common patterns? Are there common things that people do that ultimately produce innovation? Or is it just a black box and you hope a good idea hits you in the head and that's how it happens, right? Because I kind of grew up with that thought process, that it was sort of this mysterious thing, that if you had a black turtleneck on and if you drove a cool black Audi and maybe you smoked a little pot on the weekend, you'd come up with some great, fresh, innovative ideas. And what I learned going through studying 10,000 of them, we took a random sample of 10,000 examples of award-winning work. And in there are all of those nominations, right? The nominations that say, this is what I saw this person did, and this is the outcome. This is the result that's worthy of an award, a gold award, a chairman's award, a president's award. It was vetted. And then you have that leader looking at that nomination going, yeah, absolutely. That absolutely is a gold award right there, right? So you have really good structured data that's been vetted. It's not just an individual saying, I did something really cool. It's the leader, or in some cases, the leader's leader saying, wow, that made a difference in the organization. So we knew we're sitting on some good data. So as we studied this data, we wanted to know, are there common themes? Are there patterns that can predict better outcomes? And that's what we were on a search for. One of those things that we saw loud and clear in the data was that the people who had innovated, the people who had made a difference, a big part of what they did was have conversations with people that they weren't usually talking to. And that data came loud and clear. Conversations with different people than they were having conversations with before. So let's think for just a minute about the conversations we have. All of us have an inner circle, right? You have an inner circle in your personal life, and you also have an inner circle in your work life. Turns out, statistically, that's anywhere between 2 and 5 people that you trust, right? That you can pick up the phone and have a conversation with very easily and very quickly. When you have a call with an inner circle person, you don't have to spend a ton of time with a whole bunch of communication overhead before you get to the thing you really want to talk to. You can just jump right in, and you feel like it's easy, it's simple, right? They're powerful. Inner circles are a powerful source of support. However, they also have some real limitations. The challenge with inner circles are they effectively work as a bubble. Typically, the people in your inner circle think a little bit like you. They may even be in a similar life stage as you. And worst of all, they agree with you most of the time. You notice that? That's kind of why you're calling them. Hey, help me out here. Am I crazy? Come on, right? You're having those conversations. It works as a bubble. It keeps you in a very small micro community of thought. Their thoughts are not that dissimilar from yours. There's not a lot of thinking diversity if you're trying to solve difficult problems. It's a wonderful support network. They're great. We count on them. But what we found in our research was that the bulk of all of the good ideas that came through conversation with people in their outer circle, people further away from the normal sort of high-trafficked conversations where we spend all of our time. You'll find out you spend about 80% of your time talking to the same people. You may not want to believe that, but if you kind of keep an eye on that for a while, you'll notice it's a very small group of people that you were talking to all the time. And if you're looking for new solutions, you got to go outside of that little bubble. And it's sometimes a little uncomfortable, but it's essential if you're wanting to innovate. Why does it work? What is it about that conversation? Why? Why is it a facilitator of innovation? What's happening? What's happening even at the neurological level? To answer that, you got to look at the brain, and we've spent quite a bit of time looking at some current and recent brain research, and it's absolutely fascinating to me. The brain is the most magnificent thing you can ever study. Each of us has about 100 billion neurons in our brains. Just packing that many anythings in one place is just astonishing to me. They're tiny, but a neuron is a living cell. Our neurons are organized by specialty. You've got specific neurons that deal with handling smell or touch or taste or concepts. Each of those are in different regions of the brain. And when you recall a memory, the brain is drawing upon hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands and millions of neurons, drawing out from those conversations back up into effectively your RAM, your consciousness. It's unbelievable. Each one of those living entities, even though they're specialized, has ability to communicate. They live in communities. The mechanism for crossing those communities is effectively a conversation. It's either a chemical or an electrical stimulus that passes information from neuron to neuron. And what's powerful about it is that is the core of why the brain is so incredible. It's not because of the number, it's because of the number of connections. There are trillions of connections in your brain. And the power of your ability to compute, to see things, to understand things, is completely dependent on all of those connections. And the richer and the denser those connections, the quicker and the more able you are to think and have thought. And so when you think about this model of the brain and you compare it back to the social model, the brain is like a microcosm to the macrocosm of social interaction. Think about the parallels here. When we talk about brain associations, We even use words like ideas were associated. They are in association. They use things like conversation, interrelationships, connectedness. It's the same thing at a tiny level in the brain as functions in social settings. It's fascinating to see the differences. And when you have a new idea, the new idea is formed by creating a new association between two things that simply weren't connected before. That's how you have a new idea. I used to think a new idea sort of came out of space and landed in the middle of your skull, and there you have it. And it's not like that. Your brain has to connect things in order to understand them. And so a new thought is produced by connecting things that weren't connected before. That's why it works. That's why those outer circle conversations produce and provoke and facilitate fresh opportunities to form connections. That's why that's so powerful. We all talk so much about the importance of collaboration. What does that mean? That's what it means. It's bringing together new thinking because you're involving different streams of thought that can produce fresh thinking in our minds. It's interesting that statistically we found in the data that you are 3.4 times more likely to impact finances if you talk to people in your outer circle. How'd you like a 3x shot at increasing your bottom line? You can do it by having conversations away from the typical suspects, those who you sit around your table with in your leadership meetings and those people you're talking to all the time. Doesn't it sometimes feel like you're just recycling similar things? It's sort of round and round the mulberry bush we go, a little Groundhog Day feeling sometimes when you're tackling a difficult problem and you're talking about the same things over and over again. The way to break out of that is go talk to people you're not talking to right now. It's a powerful, simple idea that generates innovative thinking and new creativity. So why don't we do it? Why don't we do it? If we know it's so powerful, and I think intuitively we all understand this. I need to make more time to get out of my office, to get out of my chair and go and talk to people and get fresh perspectives or invite them in to solve a problem that I'm struggling with. Why don't we do it? These are some of the things I hear. What will they think if I'm in HR and I go wandering off into finance and say, hey, I got an HR thing. I'm just wanting to pick your brain on stuff. I hear some chucklings already, right? Is that kind of a high-stakes visit? I think often we mistakenly assume, well, that finance person's going to say, geez, how come you don't know the answer to this already? You're kind of scaring me. Why are you coming in and talking to me about an HR issue? Isn't that what we hired you to do? Aren't you supposed to know everything? It's a myth that we think that way. Let me ask you the question a different way. Does your finance person really believe you know everything? They don't right now. You won't burst any bubble, okay? They don't think you know everything already. It's totally okay to have that conversation. They won't think differently of you. In fact, they'll probably think, wow, I should be doing more of this. We're just trying to solve the problem in our own little siloed world. Wow, they just modeled for me something that I should be doing more often. It's a powerful idea. We just got to bust some of these myths that we hold that prevent us from having those outer circle conversations that will have a huge impact on our work. They won't want to help. That's another one. They'll be too busy. They don't want to come help me solve my problem. Come on. Has somebody ever approached you and said, hey, I'd just love to pick your brain on something. I'm wrestling with something here, and I thought of you. Let me just kind of lay it out. I just would be interested in your opinion. How do you feel when somebody does that with you? You're honored. You feel valued. You don't feel like, what the heck are you doing in my office? You're like, wow, you sought me out? Wow, let me put my best thinking together and see if I can help in some way. Naturally, we want to make a difference. We want to help. We want to be involved in other people's difference-making initiatives. Here's another one. They won't understand. This is too complex. This is a hard thing to solve. That person won't know anything. They won't be able to help me. Have you thought about that? Sometimes that happens. Oh, it would take half an hour to explain the problem, and they probably wouldn't get it. I just want to remind you of a pit crew thinking about a complex surgery, post-surgery problem. How does that happen? It happens because they aren't expert in what you're expert in. They don't look at it the same way you look at it. That's the benefit. So if your instinct is saying, well, they wouldn't understand, try them on. I hope they don't fully understand. They might give you exactly the kinds of ideas that will help you break through whatever the problem is you're trying to solve. Drill into your own reasons for not connecting with other people, and you'll find they're mythical. And you need to bust those myths. We need to get past those if we want to move to the next level, because we're moving into a co-creative, co-inventive, incredibly connected environment. And that is coming like a wave. And we're seeing it come from the youngest generation of the workforce. They're used to that environment. It's changed for them. It hasn't changed for many of us in our work environments. And we have to think differently. So what's recognition's role in helping build connection? How can you use recognition to strengthen those connections? Because if the connections are where the innovation comes, connection is when you get momentum behind projects. Connection is when you get success as a company. It's the connections where the value is generated. Isn't that interesting? When you flip everything on its head and you stop just seeing individuals running around doing stuff and you watch for the connections and the role that connections play, recognition can do an awful lot to strengthen those connections. In fact, I would argue at the heart of recognition is not just the expression of value for a job well done, but its ability to build connections. Let me explain. Let me show you a few pieces of research. This is a little bit busy, but the relationship, when you analyze the impact of recognition on the employee-manager relationship, that's a critical relationship. That's one we talked about right up here, right? Somewhere on probably all of your lists was a relationship with your leader. Even though we're becoming more of a democratized organization and we're flattening out, I'll tell you, if things are wrong between you and your boss, your job's compromised in some way. You're a whole lot less effective than you can be. Building that relationship between leader and employee is fundamental to helping that employee gain success in their organization. When you look at those people who reported that in their work environments, they had weak recognition versus strong recognition, and then you look at the strength of their relationship, look at them. In every one of the regions around the world, you see the same pattern. Look at US and Canada. 49% say they have strong relationships when there's weak recognition in place. So effectively, you got a 50-50 shot at having a good relationship if you don't have much recognition in place from that manager. But look what happens if there's strong recognition. Look at the strength of that relationship. 87% report, I got a strong relationship with my leader. Isn't that interesting? That role that recognition plays in building connection, not just an expression of, hey, way to go. Something else is happening during that transfer of information, during that critical connection. Look at another one. We asked this question blind. In fact, the question's about which employee benefit is most impactful in helping you have good relationships with your direct managers. Look at where salary showed up. Salary bonus. Smaller, above and beyond performance recognition. And this one amazed me. Ongoing effort recognition. Right? Simple. Costs you nearly nothing. That pat on the back, that acknowledgement, hey, I noticed what you just did. Love it. It builds momentum. It builds connection. Even more than a bonus. Bonus is going to go away pretty quickly. Obviously, we love bonuses, right? It's no diss on bonuses. It's, let's be free with those, right? But when you want to have stronger ongoing connections, build that connection of recognition. We do that, and we do it in lots of different ways. We've got ways that you can send electronic recognition, peer-to-peer recognition. Social recognition is powerful. Here's one that somebody sent to me when I got back from speaking in HR Houston. It was just a simple, quick e-card to say, hey, thanks, you made a difference for me. Simple, it made me smile. These are build-a-button kind of things where they can pick the different background and kind of have a little fun and put their own personality into it. It makes a difference for me. It touches you. It makes you realize, hey, cool, good things are going on. Somebody noticed. I'm more committed as I go in the next day. We found something else. 43% more collaboration is reported when effort is well recognized. The small things add up to the levels of collaboration. Why is that? Why do you think there's a relationship between people's ability to collaborate and peer-to-peer recognition? What do you think's going on? What's the driver? What's the relationship there? Any ideas? Any thoughts? It's the sharing of credit. It's the, you valued what I did, thank you. I trust you. It just builds a more open dialogue. And ultimately, what are we trying to build? We're trying to increase the conversations about great work in our organizations. That's what we're trying to do. We're trying to model it, we're trying to talk about it. And in that exchange, when somebody is saying, thank you for what you just did, an exchange happens. A link is forged. A stronger connection is made. I'm about to come up on my 20-year anniversary with the company. I can't even believe that. I thought I was going to come here for 2 or 3 years, and here it is, almost 20 years later. But I was just sent my yearbook, and some of you are familiar with our yearbook product. It's a new offer. We've kind of retooled a whole service award offering, and I was involved. I helped lead the team that was involved in that project, and so I was kind of interested to see what effect this would have when I got my own, and it blew me away. I'm like, check this out. It spoke to me. So this is just taken right from screenshots right on the website. Congrats. Here's what it says. Congratulations on 20 great years at O.C. Tanner. We're honored to count you among our valued professionals. Few people know the history of this company like you do. You shape our future every day, and you mentor new people and continue to raise the bar. You can take pride in the impact you've made here and the future you're creating still. I felt like that was written to me. It wasn't. It's written to every 20-year person, okay? Every 20-year person gets that message. The reason why it feels like it's connecting to me so much is because we did a ton of research. We went out into focus groups all over the place with 20-year people and said, what are you feeling at 20 years? And guess what? It's very different than what somebody's feeling at 5 years, which led us to shape the kind of messages so that it would speak to the person who's hitting 20 years. And this just totally spoke to me. It's like I saw some of those focus groups, and yet it still made an impact on me. It builds a connection. You understand me. Something's happening there. Then I get this great message from Dave and from Carolyn Tanner Irish, our chair. At O.C. Tanner, we take every opportunity to say thanks. So when we come to certain milestones in our history, like the date you joined us, we love celebrating. We revel in your accomplishment and are grateful for the work you've contributed over the years. It's work that makes a difference, that people love, and that helps our company grow. Congratulations on your 20th anniversary. Again, another little connection, a connection to the CEO and to the chair of the board. Then a little bit of a connection to our mission. What are we all about? Because celebrating great work inspires people to invent, to create, to discover. That's part of our whole mission statement. And when people are inspired, companies grow. Our work, our company, is possible because of your innovative ideas, your passion for client care, and your focus on operating excellence. You are an appreciatologist, heart and soul. Celebrating your career allows us to celebrate you. That wall back there is one of the original sections of wall from the original building in the company. It's now kind of in the middle of the company, and so it has meaning. It creates a connection to this legacy of this 87-year-old company that has had generations of people that have invented and changed and improved. Then it shows the symbol. What's the symbol of 20 years? We get a choice, the original founder's pin or a newer one. Then comes the message from Dave, and this is what I was just delighted to see. So here's a message from my leader, who happens to also be the CEO. Hey David, congratulations on your 20-year milestone. You're a genuine difference maker. On our executive team, in your leadership of great marketing group, with your individual contributions from the very beginning. You're a serious believer in what we do. You personalize our mission. You lead others and are a trusted partner with me and your peers. What a career so far, et cetera, et cetera. And then he ends, we're better because you were here, and you brought Stacy too. Stacy's my wife. And she feels absolutely a part of this organization. What kind of a connection do you think that creates between me and my leader? I sat there and just smiled. I was like, you know what? I love it here. What else can I do? It just changes you. It creates a connection in a way that's different than if he just said, hey, I noticed it's your 20-year. Way to go, rock on, keep going. He paused. He took a little time to think about that. It made a difference. It builds a connection. When we studied and surveyed those who had received leader comments, we found something interesting. 66% of recipients with comments felt more connected to their leader. Again, you expect to see that, but actually hearing that and measuring it. 67% of recipients with comments felt more connected to their company. Because who's your connection to the company usually mediated through? Usually through your leader. There's a connection. Everything's related. It's just a different way of thinking about the impact it makes. Then peer comments, and these I just sat down and just read with delight. Members of our executive team, some of them had posted pictures that they remember over the last 20 years. It's powerful. You read through these and you think, wow, I have this great connection with people I work with. I belong here. I fit here. I won't go through all of these. And then you get the Photoshop artists in the bottom right corner with the lederhosen thing going on. And so it's fun. Again, what does it do? It creates connection. This is my yearbook, so we do a printed yearbook as well, so there's an online version and then a printed one, because I don't know what's going to happen to that online one. I want this. This is something that I will keep. These are comments from my peers. This is celebrating 20 years of blood, sweat, and tears and an awfully great experience. And it sort of encapsulates some of that for me. Again, building connections to brand, building connections to leaders, building connections to team members. You look at how many of these things are touched based on recognition. You can pull those levers. You can make those connections. Even at the end of the order process, there's a connection back out that you can have to Facebook. And I'm not a huge Facebook user. I use LinkedIn a lot. I'm not a big Facebook man. But I thought, what the heck? I'm going to try this on. And so when you click that button, it posts it right through onto your, so that big green button on my Facebook page. It came from O.C. Tanner because I was celebrating my 20 years. And I was shocked. Again, I'm not a big Facebook user. I just looked at this last night, and there were 26 people who had already clicked on it saying, how they like that, and congratulations, and some people have commented. Again, connect out. Somebody mentioned spouse, family members. These are all critical connections in helping us be successful. They're celebrating with me in this relationship because they're aware of it. It's now visible. It's visible to them, and they participate in doing that. In closing, connections are incredibly powerful. I think when you look through the lens of the connections that drive innovation, the connections that drive relationships with customers, with vendors, with colleagues, that's such a huge part of what it takes to drive success. And I hope for each of you that you will be connection builders, that you will think of your role as a leader, as one who can connect people, as one who can connect outside of your group and help model that connecting behavior for the rest of your organization. Because those companies who connect and drive those kinds of connections are the ones who win, and they succeed.